you have an interest in horses and love learning more about horses, the horse industry, teaching, or even managing your own horse business, then you're in the right place. We would love you to join us on our mission, which is to improve the lives of horses around the world through the education of riders, handlers, and trainers. So get comfortable, listen in, and enjoy.
This is another of our popular Listener's Choice interviews, which we're playing over the weekend. We've chosen the most popular interviews for you to select the Listener's Choice winner. If you're not sure how the Listener's Choice competition works, have a look at horsechats.com/choice for the rules and the leaderboard. Horse welfare and safety are of utmost importance where humans have any interaction with horses. Within the courses at International Horse College, we only utilise methods that promote safe and humane ways of interaction between horses and humans. We only support safe methods of educating riders, handlers and trainers about horse welfare. internationalhorsecollege.com, registered training organisation 31352. Today's guest is Elise Chan. Elise is a published author, former reporter, editor, human resources professional, and also the host of Because of Horses, another Horse Lovers podcast. I'd like to introduce Elise. How are you today, Elise?
I'm doing great. Thanks. How about you, Glenys?
Oh, great. Good to talk to you, Elise.
You too, thanks.
Yeah. Now, Elise, I normally start off with a favourite quote because I think a favourite quote just gets people to know you a little bit better. So what have you got for us?
Oh, my goodness. Well, so, the first quotes that come to mind are from, legendary individuals renowned for their love of horses like Winston Churchill. But I have to tell you honestly that one of the first quotes that comes to mind is actually from Buckaroo Banzai, which was this movie that came out in the 80s. I'm a sci-fi nerd. And it was, no matter where you go, there you are. And I think the reason that I really love that quote, and I keep coming back to it time and again, is the reminder to be present, you know? And where you are in that moment is where you should mentally be, whether it's having a conversation like this, but particularly if you're working with your horses, you really need to be there and present and engaged.
Yes. Even before you get to your horse, it's a matter of letting everything go and just enjoying the time that you spend.
Absolutely.
Now, thinking about horses, because you've had a background doing author, reporter, editor, human resources professional, were they horse-related jobs or not?
Not.
Okay.
But so I should back up a little bit. So I'm the child of a non-equestrian family. I'm sort of like the cuckoo's child. I'm the only one in my family who loves horses.
Yes.
And my first word literally was horse. We lived in the Virginia horse country. There were horse farms all around us, but we had a small yard and no horses. But my parents realized very early on that I absolutely adored horses, defying all logic. And so they let me ride from a very early age. I started riding when I was about 2 years old. And we ultimately, I had horses throughout my childhood. We ultimately discovered the U.S. Pony Club, where I really got my first bona fide instruction and genuinely learned horsemanship. Up to that point, I think I had an army of guardian angels watching over me because we made every mistake in the book. I mean, there wasn't a mistake that we missed, right? And yet, thank goodness I survived them all. And it was at that point where I became truly serious about riding. I was an eventer. And here in the U.S., I evented on the East Coast and was very fortunate in, the horses that I was able to ride and the people I was able to work with. But my parents also told me that when I went off to college, my horse was not going with me, which was heartbreaking because the school that I went to had a wonderful equestrian team. And I think that really translated for me, maybe at a subconscious level, that there's your passion, which was horses, and then there's the real world, which was reporting on Capitol Hill, being a writer, working in human resources, ultimately. And so I followed these disparate paths where, my weekends, my evenings, my vacation was all around horses. I had horses, but my work, my career had nothing to do with them at that point. And it was a whole number of years in the making, but ultimately, it occurred to me that some of the happiest people I've ever met are those who have figured out how to combine
Yes.
the things that they are most passionate about with where they spend and how they spend the majority of their time. And that's a job. You spend more time on your job than you do with your family, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, how wonderful if that happens to be with horses. And so the podcast, as well as some photography that I do, is all centered on horses and our community of horse lovers. And so I get to talk horses, I get to be around horses, and it's, the angels are singing, the skies have opened, it's roses and sunshine every day. So I finally got smart.
Yes. And I think too, a lot of people do that now. The horse industry has opened up so much, it's broadened, and to combine your love of horses with another career is just absolutely brilliant. Some people I talk to, they say, no, I've always had horses. I took a year off after I left school to do other stuff before I was going to start university. And then I never started university. Others have said, I'll go to university, but then I'll just do this bit of time with horses. And they've done horses. And other people, similar to you, have had a career, done other stuff, but come back to horses. So a bit of a mixture there. But in between there, I think you've written a book. Is that right?
Yeah, I wrote a horse book. Mm-hmm. A Parent's Guide to Riding Lessons, and it was endorsed by the U.S. Pony Club and Young Riders Magazine and a number of other organizations. But really, Glenys, its genesis was in my own experience as the child of non-equestrian parents.
Yes.
And how on earth do you help them? And what really touched that off was I was doing a barn tour. And going around, and I did some consulting in the equestrian world, just, on the side. And I went into a barn and I saw a terribly unsafe situation. And it was a child involved, and the mother was standing there observing this. And I couldn't believe that this was being allowed to continue. And it occurred to me that parents who don't know anything about horses are putting a tremendous amount of trust into an individual who has hung out their shingle and said, in effect, I know what I'm doing. You can trust me.
Yes.
And how could they possibly know not to? What questions should they be asking? What resources are available to them? What is their role in all of this? Because for non-equestrian people going into a barn, we speak a different language. We interact with these huge animals who have minds and interests of their own, and that can be incredibly intimidating. So I wrote this book from that perspective, and as the parent of a horse-crazy child. At the time, my daughter was quite young, and it just kind of all came together in this book, and I was very fortunate that it struck a chord. So, that's my equestrian book.
And I think, like people do, it's almost like having a big dog. We've got a dog, we don't need a license or any sort of training to have a dog, so we'll just have a horse and hope that it all goes okay. And yes, if someone else has had a horse, then they obviously know more than us, but unless they're qualified and trained, they probably don't know as much as what they need to know.
Well, and that's actually absolutely true. And something I understand that's unique to the U.S. is that in other countries, equestrian endeavors, sports, and training are governed to one extent or another by the government. But in the United States, it's not. Anybody can hang out a shingle. Qualifications are virtually irrelevant. And so we have one organization, the Certified Horsemanship Association, CHA, that was established to fill that gap, to promote safety and education throughout the entire horse industry. certifying instructors and accrediting equine facilities. And so this is a huge big deal if you can have a CHA certification. But how on earth would a non-equestrian parent do that? I mean, shoot, there are horse lovers who don't know this.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so it really is the Wild West here. Whatever you can do to help educate is important.
Yep. And it's certainly tightening up in Australia to what it was. But one other thing is that we have barns. We do. It's a lot more established now than it ever was. But it's very easy just to have a horse in a paddock down the road, even to, we've got so much space here, as you do there, but we've got a much lower population to just have, we'll just get a couple of acres and put a couple of horses in the backyard, or we'll just rent off, a bit of a local area and we'll just put a horse down there. And there's not established barns the same way. No, I shouldn't say that, because there are established barns. They're called adjustment centres, but not quite in the same way that it is in the US, in the UK, in Europe. It's a little bit more open than that. So there's probably more areas for parents to make mistakes. It's a problem, but I think it's a matter of educating people to not hang out those shingles unless they actually know what they're doing. They've got the qualifications, they've worked in that industry, they've got the experience, they're insured. It's a business. They should know what they're doing, and also to the parents. It's I see it as a matter of education.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, you've got horses, you've had horses, you've competed, you've now got, as well as that, you've now got a podcast, you've got other things. Are you doing anything else? It's all just about combining your other skills with horses? That's your main thing you're doing now?
Yeah, that's really how it's come together.
Good.
It's been great fun. I went through kind of an introspective phase in 2017 spring, and ultimately just decided that it was time to figure out how to take these two disparate parts of my life and mold them into something that just made sense. And so Because of Horses podcast was born, and the first episode was aired in October 2017. And so we're now working, we're booked through late spring 2019, and we've got 66 episodes, because it's a weekly podcast.
Sure.
66 episodes completed. Yeah.
Good.
It went fast, too.
Yes, it does. And it's great talking to people. I love it. I just love it. I love talking to people like yourself, who've combined your other passion with horses. But what would you say, just as a bit of a tip for people, if they would like to combine their other job, their real job, with horse job, and it's a big leap, it's a big step, especially if they're going from a full-time, well-paid job and running their own business. Would you recommend they do it part-time? Would you recommend they go all in? Or what would you say to them, just as a bit of a tip to get into that industry?
Oh, golly. I think it really depends on what your passions are. So one of the thing that I see time and time again is the unique way that people stitch those pieces together. I've met and interviewed business professionals. They've worked in the corporate world forever, and have been able to translate the skills that they learned in the corporate setting into a corporate setting that just happens to be in the horse world. It could be for a breed association. It could be for a discipline association. It could be in the racing industry. It could be, in any number of places. The key is having those skills that are translatable. And now I feel like I'm the HR person talking, but really it's taking a true assessment of what you have done, what skills can be translated into a different setting, and then having a really good understanding of what the horse world entails where you live. There are marketing professionals who specialize in the equestrian world. There are shipping distribution centers that specialize in the equestrian world. They're broadcasters, television, radio, and podcast, of course. there's such a wide and diverse opportunity or series of opportunities within the horse world to be able to find your niche. The trick, though, I think, is in understanding what capabilities you possess and then applying them maybe in a different way. I think traditionally, Glenys, people have thought about being in the horse world as being a rider, a competitor,
Yes.
a trainer,
Yes.
hands-on in the barn. And that's all certainly true. But there are a million different ways you can be involved with horses. And in that environment and in that wonderful community of horse lovers without actually touching a horse. And it feels almost, like heresy to say that, but it is possible. And getting closer and into that environment is so rewarding on its own. And then if you do get to put your hands on a horse, how wonderful is that? That's just icing on the cake.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I liked the way that there was one point that you made about, knowing what the horse world entails where you live, because if people are looking at a business, there's still got to be a need in the horse industry. And if there's not that need there, then there's no people that are going to provide that income, because it still is a business. There's got to be the need there to put it out there, to hang your shingles.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's so many creative ways to do it. So one of the first examples that comes to mind, if you've ever seen it, is Life Between the Ears, which is a wonderful Instagram and Facebook social media community that was founded by Christine Doms, who lives in Washington State in the United States. And Christine is a graphic designer, incredibly talented graphic designer who loves horses.
Yep.
And so she created this following of tens of thousands, probably at 100,000 or more now, followers online. And they're all taking pictures from their horses' saddles. So they're shooting between the horses' ears at whatever it is that they see around the world. And she's got people sending her photos from Morocco and Australia and New Zealand and Europe and the US and Canada. I mean, all over the world, literally. And she takes these gorgeous photos and she curates them. And she's created, just because she loves graphic design and photography and horses, she's created this thing that didn't exist before. And really has developed its own life because she just imagined something different, And so there's so many unique ways. That's what I was talking about before. There's so many unique ways to find a place for yourself in the horse world. It's one of the wonderful things, the many wonderful things about loving horses, is that there's so many different ways to express it.
Yes, and certainly an international love as well. It's not just confined to one particular country. Yeah.
Absolutely. And in fact, I think that one of the most unique aspects of loving horses is it transcends geography, country, politics, language, culture.
Yes.
All of us love horses from all over the world, all walks of life. We have that commonality that really is a beautiful thing, particularly in today's day and age. We can connect and agree on this very fundamental, kind of visceral experience.
Yes, yeah.
And horses do that.
They do. Elise, tell us about, we were talking a little bit before the show and you were saying about one of your guests was quite intrigued by horses, didn't actually own horses, but I think you said he wrote a book about the Mustangs?
Yeah, so this is a Pulitzer Prize winning reporter, a New York Times reporter, who had never ridden a horse in his life, never owned a horse, never been around horses. But something about the Mustang had really caught his imagination. The image of the Mustang and all that it represents, independence and freedom, these bedrock ideals. And as he began looking at the Mustang dilemma here in the United States, his reporter instincts kicked into gear, and he wanted to better understand, what was going on with the Mustang, how we got to this mess of a place that we are right now. It's ridiculous. And where on earth we're going to go with the situation, but most importantly with these horses. And so he wrote a book. His name is David Phillips, and he wrote a book called Wild Horse Country. It was a New York Times bestseller, and I highly recommend it. It's a wonderful foundational exploration of how we got to this place. And I thought before I read the book that I was fairly knowledgeable on the situation, and I learned a lot from it. And particularly, he poses some potential solutions for where to go from here. And some of it's out of the box thinking, and some of it is just more clarified thinking. But there's an example of someone who just loves the image of the horse and didn't have a personal experience with them, but could still connect and could share that experience with others, both people who love horses, but also people like him who like the idea of horses, but didn't really know much about them personally.
Yeah. What's one of the solutions? Or, you said about the out-of-the-box solutions. It's, I'm just interested. But, because he's coming in from a non-horse background, so he's not coming in on the side of, just anything. He's just coming in with a solution that may be one that's going to work. What did he suggest?
Yeah, and that was actually something that I told him. I said, I think maybe you're the perfect person to have written this book. For that very reason. You got no skin in the game. One of the things that he suggested was it was twofold. So one was around birth control. That's for the horses. That's not incredibly new, incredibly out of the box thinking, because we've been trying to do that on a small scale for a while. The Bureau of Land Management is strapped for cash, and so that really is a grassroots effort on the part of volunteers. But getting behind that from a governmental perspective and providing the funding to do it in a meaningful way is what he was recommending on the one hand. And there were some details involved in it that really made that a feasible possibility. But the other thing that he was saying is that we actually have a number of programs in the U.S. and the West that are geared toward eliminating predators. So mountain lions, cougars, they go by a bunch of different names, bear, wolves.
Yes.
And so nothing preys on these wild horses. And they are, in many cases, protected. And so their population is growing at about 25 to 27% annually, depending upon who you talk to.
Wow.
And in some areas, the range can support it, but in other areas, it can't. And at the same time, there's competition with natural wildlife, and there are issues with ranchers and grazing and shared spaces and lots of different complex issues. But he was saying, pull back the bounty on predators and let's do some testing in different areas and see what predation does on controlling the population growth, because there were a couple of areas that he studied where it just happened that predators had increased in numbers, and what they were seeing in terms of the number of wild horses in those areas, the population was being controlled quite effectively. And so take the bounties off. Well, this is all government run, and so the different agencies don't talk with each other. So the group that controls the wild horse management is not the same group that determines whether or not we're going to have any kind of predator control programs out there, or bounties on these animals. And so everybody's at odds. They have their own little silo that they work within, but they're not really talking with each other. And so he was trying to be a conduit for that process. And unfortunately, bureaucracies are pretty well dug in.
It's a big problem. We've got a problem here. It's can you, and that thinking out of the box, maybe it is, maybe it's not, but at least he's offered solutions.
Yeah.
If you're an equestrian coach or a horse riding instructor, or even if you aspire to be one, have a look at the free video series for horse riding instructors on the Horse Chats website. Go there now, have a look, horsechats.com. I'm just thinking, Elise, who one of your most surprising guests on your podcast, who would that have been? Surprising, someone you've thought, that you could recommend that people go to your podcast and listen to this particular interview, in this particular guest?
Oh my goodness, they've all been so remarkable.
I know, because if you asked me the same question, I wouldn't be able to answer. But it's
yeah. Gosh, I think probably one of the most unique, and he was absolutely delightful to talk with, was Mike Loades.
Okay.
And Mike is a British military historian. He's a television host for Discovery. He regularly appears on the BBC. He's a popular presenter at the British Museum. He's an advisor on archaeological sites. He's a multi-published author. He's a fight choreographer. I mean, the guy is just phenomenal. But I think what I loved most about talking with Mike is that he has this voracious intellectual curiosity, and he's constantly reading, he's constantly learning, and as he's doing both, his imagination gets sparked, and so he wants to see if he can figure out how to do that. And so he'll go out and he'll build a chariot, and then he'll teach his horses to pull the chariot. He'll figure out how to do a Parthenon shot from the back of his horse. I mean, he does all of these crazy things. He's even advised on the creation of the video game Assassin's Creed. I mean, he's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. And so you talk with him, and his energy and enthusiasm is just infectious, and you just want to keep talking.
Okay. All right. I think that's probably a good one then to get started on. But what are you looking forward to now? What have you got on the horizon? Have you got any more books? Have you got just let us know what you've got planned.
Oh, sure. Well, we've got a long list of wonderful guests coming up well into the new year that I'm so excited to be talking with. And some of them are just particularly fascinating. There's a Paralympian from Germany who was just recently inducted into the National Cowgirl Museum and Hall of Fame in Fort Worth, Texas. The horse mistress for Game of Thrones and the Wonder Woman films, Camilla Napru is actually from England. And looking forward to getting her on the calendar as well for a conversation. Just so many interesting people doing remarkable things with horses and within the horse world. One of the things that's always been fascinating to me, you talk with these guests and you think, okay, I got a pretty good handle on their niche within the horse world, and as you talk with them, it's like the horizons just open up, and
Yes.
The things that you learn, you're like, oh my gosh, you did that, and it's remarkable. It's just so interesting to talk with them, and so many of them are giving back very quietly, and in ways that are particularly meaningful to them, but they're doing that, and it sounds a little cheesy, but they're making the world a better place, the horse world a better place, by combining those skills that they have, the interests that they have, their love of horses, and then in some unique way, they're improving the world.
Yep. And I think this whole making the horse world a better place for horses is, it's an important message to get out there.
Oh, it absolutely is.
Yeah. Elise, before we go, just tell us a little bit about, if you had a philosophy that you would like to give to our listeners, just in a couple of sentences, what would you say to them?
Oh, I think the one thing that really resonates with me, again, in so many of these conversations with guests, is it's very easy to look at these incredibly successful people, whatever it is that they're doing, photographers or competitors or filmmakers or whatever, and to only see where they are in their lives right now. But what every one of them will tell you is that all along the way they hit obstacles, they had sleepless nights, there was self-doubt, they had to recommit to their passion or their dream or their goals, sometimes on a day-to-day basis. It was not a clear and easy path. We get to talk with them after they have achieved, some level of success, but the path was a very rocky and difficult one for 99.9% of them. And it's that consistent, often daily recommitment to their goals, to their dreams, that I think is the most important lesson in all of it.
Yeah, I think something to think about there. Now, Elise, we're going to put your link to your podcast, Because of Horses, but if people would like to contact you, how else can they do that? Can they go to becauseofhorses.com? Is that the best way?
Well, there are a couple of ways. So, the website is www.becauseofhorses.com. My email address is Elise, Elise, at becauseofhorses.com. We also have a wonderfully interactive and engaged community on Facebook on the Because of Horses page, and our group as well. And so I'm in and out of Facebook every day. I get IMs all the time and love to connect with people that way too. Unfortunately, I'm not as active on Instagram or Twitter. I know a lot of people are. I just don't get either one of them. So Facebook is where to find me.
Okay. That's good anyway. That's good to contact you. And those details will be on your page, which will be horsechats.com/Elise Chan. Or just go to horsechats.com, search for Elise, search for Chan, and you'll find Elise's details, podcast details. Elise, why Because of Horses? Was there particularly a reason you chose that name, or you just thought all along it was Because of Horses?
It really resonated for me personally. The why.
Yes.
Why are you doing this? Whatever this might be for you personally. Well, because of horses.
Yep.
The paths that the guests are on. Well, how did they get on that path? Well, because of horses. And no matter what their path was, that was always the answer, because of horses.
Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense then. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Good to talk to you. And I will talk to you again sometime soon. I'd like to get you back again just to ask you a little bit more in depth about some of the things that you're doing. I'll talk to you soon. Bye.
I look forward to it. Bye-bye.
Now, if you're still there, you probably know that I'm absolutely passionate about education within the horse industry. That's why I host this podcast. My other venture is Online Horse College. Have a look now at onlinehorsecollege.com and I'll see you over there.
Remember that our comments and instructions are general in nature and do not take into consideration your individual horses or your individual ability and circumstances. If you enjoyed this podcast, then please leave your comment below.